Our guest, Senator Ted Cruz. How are you, sir?
Mark, my friend, I'm doing terrific. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing very, very well. So tell me, you wrote a letter to Yale. What's going on at Yale?
Well, Yale, a couple of months ago, announced a new financial aid policy. And it is a policy that is openly discriminatory. It discriminates against Christians. It discriminates against those who believe in traditional marriage and traditional sexual values. And the origin of this begins with the group, the Alliance Defending Freedom, which you know is a public interest law firm that defends religious liberty. They argued that the Colorado Baker case, the Christian baker in Colorado who did not want to be forced to celebrate a same-sex wedding, and he was persecuted, he was punished for those views, and he took the case to the Supreme Court, and he won. He won a victory at the Supreme Court defending his religious liberty rights. Well, a lawyer from ADF was speaking on Yale's campus and talking about the Supreme Court victory that ADF had just won. And the LGBT group on Yale's campus, a group called Outlaws, which is actually a pretty clever name, they did what college leftists do. They protest. They protested, and they demanded Yale change their policy. And what Yale announced is that, so Yale pays summer stipends to Yale law students who work at a public interest law firm, and it has a loan repayment program for Yale graduates that work at a public interest law firm. And they announced that will apply to absolutely everybody except for those Yale students that go and work at a Christian organization like ADF that believe in traditional marriage or traditional sexual values. And it is blatantly discriminatory. And so I am the chairman of the Constitution Subcommittee, the Senate Judiciary Committee. And so I launched an investigation of Yale's discrimination against people of faith. And just this week sent Yale a demand for documents to get every one of the emails, of the memos, of all the background correspondence in adopting this policy, because what I expected to reveal is that this was driven out of an animus specifically for Alliance Defending Freedom, that they wanted to blacklist ADF, and they wanted to punish any Yale law students with the temerity to go and work for that organization. And that, among other things, Yale receives vast amounts of federal funds, and federal civil rights laws prohibit discrimination against religious faith. And so we are going to investigate and shine a light and hopefully stop this discriminatory policy.
I'm glad you're doing this. This is very, very important. But, you know, there's a lot of repression and suppression going on our college campuses, isn't it? I mean, whether it's Christians or Jews, whether it's conservatives, whatever it is, more and more these are like they have like a monopolistic ideology that they teach, that they enforce, absolute intolerance. What do you make of this?
Well, you've got a bunch of disgruntled 60s radicals who have taken over colleges and universities, and many of them are socialists and far leftists, and actually this really is a sign of fear and weakness on their part. They're afraid. They can't defend their ideas. And so instead, it's a sign of fear and weakness that they want to silence anyone who disagrees with them. You know, you and I both went to law schools where we had a lot of professors who were leftists. I had a number of professors who were open communists and espoused communism, would readily admit they were Marxists. Now look, as you know, my family has suffered directly under communism. My family's been imprisoned and tortured by Fidel Castro's goons. My tia Sonia was imprisoned and tortured by Castro's goons. I take communism deadly seriously, and yet I was perfectly happy to take classes from communist professors because it's valuable to know what the other side thinks. The left doesn't think that way. They're afraid to defend their views, and so they're trying to use power instead to silence their students. And the whole point of universities, and especially law schools, is to learn to think, to learn to reason, to learn to defend your views, to defend them in what John Stuart Mill called the marketplace of ideas. And so I think it's incumbent on all of us to defend free speech and to stop this censorship and intolerance that we're seeing at colleges and universities.
One more quick question. You and I have been around a while. I mean, was chief of staff to an attorney general. You were a litigator for some period of time. I represented the attorney general in the Iran-Contra matter after he left office. I've dealt with these independent counsel. I see what Congress has done. What do you make of all these subpoenas for private information from the president and all the claims that he's obstructing when he goes to court in order to defend the office of the presidency? Have you ever seen anything like this, and what do you make of this?
I think the anger and rage we see among congressional Democrats is unprecedented, and they are consumed with hatred for President Trump. He can do nothing right in their minds. There is nothing good in this country. So we've got, as a result of cutting taxes, as a result of repealing job-killing regulations, we got the lowest unemployment in 50 years, the lowest African-American and Hispanic unemployment ever recorded, and yet congressional Democrats are listening to their left-wing base that just hates Donald Trump. And so I think the next 2 years, the Pelosi House is going to be nonstop investigations, nonstop subpoenas, and I think we're going to see them go after impeachment because it is a politics of hatred and vitriol and division. And sadly, the Democratic Party is moving further and further to the left, motivated by that hatred of the president.
And there's no chance in hell the Senate's going to vote to remove the president of the United States.
0.0%. But the facts don't matter. Look, you watched the testimony a couple of weeks ago when Bill Barr came and testified in the Senate Judiciary Committee. The position of the Democrats was utterly ludicrous. And they were screaming, they were impugning Barr's integrity, they were demanding that he resign. And their argument boiled down to this. When the Mueller report was submitted to Barr, he wrote a 4-page summary of its conclusions and sent it to Congress. Bob Mueller at the time asked him to also send his 20-some-odd page summary.
I've got 30 seconds. I apologize. Go ahead.
He didn't send it then, but he sent it 3 weeks later along with the entire damn report.
Yeah.
And so the Democrats' complaint is, you suppressed this summary, which I have in my hands and everyone can read. If he was trying to suppress it, he's really lousy at it. That
They're
shows
insane.
how weak their argument is.
All right, Ted Cruz, keep it up, brother.
God bless you.
You too. Thank you. We'll be right back.